of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
Thanks everyone for coming out to today's candidate forum for the District 35 here in Arkansas. I want to thank you to the candidates, Lieutenant Joe McKenzie and Tyler Deeds for joining us tonight. For all of you for coming out despite all the weather and everything we've dealt with the last couple of days and nights. Just a couple of housekeeping items, just so you are aware. We are going to kick it off with some brief candidate introductions, so 3 minutes each. We then have a handful of prepared questions that we will be allowing the candidates 1 minute each to respond to. And then we will turn it over to audience questions. We have, and we would prefer for folks, if you do have a question, to visit our table over here and write down your question, and we'll have each candidate select a question randomly so that we get some audience input. And of course, we encourage you after the event, we have plenty of time in this venue, so feel free to mingle one-on-one afterward as well. And just a quick word about us. My name is Garrett Watson. My wife Victoria is here. We're hosting the event tonight. We live in Farmington. Moved here about a year ago, and it's been exciting. I'm actually a Yankee from upstate New York, born and raised up there, and lived here last year and loving it in the community. And so we're motivated to help increase the participation and have folks get to know, especially in the Farmington, Lincoln, Prairie Grove area, about this particular race. So with that in mind, I think the only other housekeeping item is, of course, we have water and community restrooms are right over here. I haven't seen them. Am I missing anything?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we'll kick it off with 3 minutes each introductions. We'll go right down the line for each candidate to introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with questions.
Well, welcome everybody. Thanks, Derek, Victoria. So many people are not even voting in the primaries, and you guys are now, leading voting, these sorts of forums. I think it's fantastic. I really appreciate it. It's good to be here. I had to wear my high water boots again. That's been sort of typical for me, it seems like lately. But I'm always glad to do that and keep myself dry. But this is home to some of my greatest victories. Prairie Grove is. I beat the Tigers a couple of times with a last-minute free throw, or maybe a strikeout or something. But I also had my share of humbling defeats here, right, David? I think we didn't always beat Prairie Grove when the Lincoln Wolves came to town, but we always were able to get along and be good sports. And that's one of the reasons I'm running. I really love this district. The redrawing of the district drew in a lot of the towns and communities and areas where I grew up, and it's like home for me. I say, we say Arkansas is a land of opportunity. I think District 35 is a land of emerging opportunity. And just driving over here today from Fayetteville, where I was with my mom today, for a doctor's appointment, you can see the growth is coming this way. It's another reason I want to be involved in it. For you most of you don't know much about me. I grew up on a farm in Lincoln, very active in sports, FFA. My dad was a dentist over there. I still have some of his fillings. Some of y'all may have some of his fillings too. He prided himself on that. I have friends and family here at Prairie Grove. Most of you may be from Prairie Grove. And been to church here, did some recovery ministry with Carl Palmer, who's now out at the church. We'll see him Sunday morning. From Lincoln, I took an ag econ degree from the University of Arkansas and moved to Washington, D.C. for my first job. And while I was there, I had a chance to go to Ronald Reagan's first inauguration. And that really sort of gave me my conservative roots kind of hardwired, down in the DNA at that point. Later in Stuttgart, I ran as a Republican. This is down in Arkansas County, by the way. I worked for Riceland Foods down there, a big grain co-op. I ran as a Republican for state representative, and we won some towns, wards and townships that hadn't voted Republican since Reconstruction. And in the end, I wound up with a lot of little victories in that race, including relationships that I hope exist to this day, or still do. Asa Hutchinson at the time was our party chairman. I got to know Mike and Janet Huckabee when they ran for Senate. I was one of the few Republicans known to man down in Arkansas County at that time. We finally found a bunch of folks to join us, but I hope when Sarah's elected governor that I can use that relationship to help us in District 35 to get our share of the pie. You'll hear more about my platform and positions in the Q&A. So I know I'm probably about running out of time. I don't know how we're doing, but business development and recruitment, education and training, and excellence in healthcare are all my pillars of my platform, and we'll hear more about those when we do our Q&A.
Yeah.
I'm Gayla McKenzie, and I am right now state representative for District 92. So that includes the Gravette, Bella Vista surrounding towns, that area right there. I'm running for the state Senate seat, of course, and that district changes dramatically for me. I lose half of my hometown. I also lose Bella Vista that I represent. So you folks over here do not know me. So I want to be as transparent as I can. I am different, and I think I can hopefully prove that this evening. I am a stone, right now I have a stone veneer manufacturing company. So I'm a small business owner. I've been doing that for about 3 years. We were shorthanded today, so my husband and I were out there in the warehouse pulling stone. Before that, I had a radio station, KBVA, right, 106.5, 50,000 watt FM radio station. It actually covered all of Senate District 35. I did that for 27 years. I programmed music. I love that with all my heart. I'm also a licensed attorney, but I have not practiced in years, but I do keep my license up. I have a degree in music education, and active in my church, Kiwanis Club and Gravette, active in my school, active in, I believe if you care about something, you're active. You want to try to help shape it. So I am a current representative. I'm in my second term, which means I'm in my 4th year. So I was different. Here's how I'm different. I'm a free bird. I believe in not being tethered. So I'm known for a girl who will go up there and speak out against any bill that's bad. I don't care who the sponsor is. I don't care if it's a big business bill and they may be unhappy with me. If it's a bad bill, if it does not reflect either the Republican Party platform or my constituents' values, if it's not something that's good for my constituents, I'm going to work to defeat it. At first, I was just a lonely no vote. Then I would speak against it. And then I started learning, what does that help my constituents if I don't try to help them defeat it, if I think it's a bad bill? May not make you as popular. May get you some primary challengers. That's fine. But I believe we need people who are constituent driven, who don't love this job so dearly that they're going to compromise on this or on that. Because maybe I'll lay low on this one. Because I don't want to get in trouble. I want to come back. I don't love the job that much. I have another job. I have another focusing on. And I don't hold this job too dearly. So that is what's different about me. I've learned to reach out to my constituents, especially on the education committee. Bad bill. Here it is. Let's work together to try to defeat it. That's what I think is one of the things that makes me different. I have no idea how I'm doing in time.
20 seconds.
I will stop early. A little different.
We have some seats in the front for if you guys want to sit down.
Hey guys, my name is Tyler Dees, and this is probably the 5th or 6th forum we've done. And I know most of the folks in the room have been at most of them, so good to see you all again. And the new ones, nice to see you, nice to meet you. I live in Silent Springs, and I'm running for the state Senate seat in this district. This has been an awesome journey. It's been awesome. I've never been a politician. I worked for Simmons, I sold chicken, and my wife and I, we've been, I've been in Silent for 22 years. We met at JVU, John Brown University, and we've got 3 kids. And my family's got ties to Prairie Grove, so this is awesome. I love getting to come back through here. My dad and grandma and my mom lived in this area for a long time. Dad's a basketball coach at Prairie Grove. And Leola Dees, my grandma, his mom, worked in the flower shop right down the street in Flowers and Friends. So this is real fun to come back to this area where we get to run around with my dad and grandparents in this part of the district. So love the opportunity to be here. But this has been an awesome journey. When my wife and I about 8 years ago or so, we just started praying, Lord, it seems very intentionally you guys called to this area. We were saying no to other jobs in different areas, and we just felt, God, you were calling us to Silent Springs and surrounding area, and we just said, God, we don't want to miss a while. And He had called us to have our arrows out for serving the community. And so that led to awesome opportunities, things with working with small business owners, serving our church, and coaching 27 youth teams in the last 6 years. Okay, the Rugrats running around, and then I currently serve on the Children's Advocacy Board. So a heart for service is kind of always been in our family and in our mind, and really serving young families especially is important to us. So folks we've been serving with in the community in the area, since I even thought about politics. We said, well, we follow it, but honestly never thought about it. And so we said, well, we better pray about it. God puts awesome piece about it on our heart to run. Never even heard of any opponents, never heard of never met any of our current city senator. And but God has put this piece about running a heart for fighting for conservative values. That's very important to us. We look at our babies, we say, Lord, we don't want to see them raised in an area that looks like California, to be frank. And so that, unfortunately, we see Arkansas is it doesn't represent a Republican majority-led state. And so those are the things that I would love to represent as well. I'd love to represent our western Benton County, western Washington County side in Little Rock. And so pray through that. That's our heart. I want to filter everything through God's word, through our relationship with Him above all. And second would be Constitution and Arkansas State Constitution. So just pure through there, have a heart to listen, and a servant leadership. So that's what I'd bring. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Now we'll turn to the people questions that we have for each of the candidates, and the candidates will have about 1 minute each to respond. So we'll kick it off, I guess, first with Gayla. First question is, what are the 3 biggest issues facing Arkansas and our district right now?
1 minute, is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'll try to summarize here. So I think a number of the issues we're facing impact both our state and District 35. We know that we've got a surplus. We got to figure out how we're going to do it. Everybody's impacted by that, and I believe it's really important that we get constituent input. We need to push the information out to you on what our options are and how we're going to address it. I think that may be another question. I'll move on, but that's important. Number 2, important both statewide and District 35, education. Everywhere I go, people want to talk about education. We have a number of concerns, both with the quality, the results we are or are not getting, and also with the content, where it's veering. So that's, wow. That's at my time?
50 seconds.
50 seconds. Number three, broadband, of course, is important too, and to do statewide, and to this area right here, we know growth and the impact, but I think we'll hear that later,
I think there's lots of things to focus on. For me, I think about culture, like I mentioned before. That, to me, that hits education. I look at some things that other states have been able to pass, and I would like for us to move in that direction as well, in Florida and Iowa, making sure that we can increase parental rights in discussions around curriculum and what's being taught. I think it's a big thing parents care about that. I'm going to go where I hear that in our district. I also would say taxation. I referenced that before about how we claim to be, we are a majority-led Republican assembly, but we have some of the highest tax rates in the country, and so I'd like to see that addressed. And then for me, morally, I would love to see abortion completely taken off the table, not allowed. I'm excited to see what's going on with the Supreme Court and what's being moved in that direction. Hopefully, it will be pushed down to our states to decide that for themselves, and I would love to see that completely repealed and not abolished.
Well, I think I'll echo much what my colleagues have said here. The University of Arkansas does a study. It's the only one that I know of. I'm a data analytics guy, so I looked at that. They say the 3 top concerns for Arkansans, and that would include people in our district, are the economy, healthcare, and this year it was a dead heat. Politics and politicians and education. In years before, it was always education, but now people are worried about the way we're doing our body politic in Little Rock. I think people are wanting to know who among us, and I think that's another question actually coming up, so we'll get into it. But how are we going to find common ground and work together in Little Rock? So those are the big ones for Arkansans. I can corroborate that from the campaign trail. And I think also with the impending overturn of Roe v. Wade, the state will be a trigger state, and our abortion law is gonna have to be, the detail on that is gonna have to be worked out, because we are one of the 26 trigger states.
Next question, we'll start with Tyler this time, is what does it mean for you to be a conservative?
For me, it's core. For me, it's what I believe is biblical values. I want to, like I said before, everything from whether that is a conversation on the side of the street, door to door, or in my home, or when we're voting on policies, I want to filter everything through the biblical worldview. So it starts there. I also think it has to do with, when I think about being a conservative, it brings me back to a culture of how this country was founded, about how Arkansas, when we became 25th state, our founding fathers built this country on conservative values. And so that's what I would like to see. That's what it means to be a conservative, about morals and values entrenched, not in just bumper sticker things, but as far as ingrained in everything who we are, how you live, how you work, how you raise your families. And so for me, ultimately, it's a biblical perspective.
Jeffy?
This is like, the whack-a-mole game. Killing my 1 minute. I mentioned going to Reagan's inauguration and becoming ingrained in conservatism after that, just, totally. Some of the things that he espoused and that the party has espoused are on our platform about conservative politics, the power of faith in God, the sanctity of life, individual responsibility and initiative, individual freedom and liberty secured by a limited government, lower taxes to produce economic growth, and strong national defense. There are some more, but those were Reagan's core values for conservatism. I would also just like to say I'm guided by 2 books in this type of job, and that's the Bible and the Arkansas Constitution. So that to me would also be part of being conservative.
Limited government, but that's easy to say. We don't practice that in Arkansas. We do not practice that in our legislature. Bills are falling from the sky. That's not good. So in practice, I'm really big about limiting bills, limiting government, personal responsibility, personal freedom. When I visit people door to door, they always ask, okay, you're Republican, are you conservative? And I think what they're asking about, they want limited government, they're always wanting to know, are you pro-life? Definitely pro-life, vote for that trigger bill. They want to know about education, what your stand on education, and all these different social issues that are right now impacting our schools. Are you going to help keep out a lot of this social engineering of our young kids and throughout the K through 12? So that's what people are asking me when I'm going door to door. That's how they're defining conservative. That's how they're wanting to discuss it. I don't want to stop level.
Next question for candidates. How will you stay connected with your constituents to keep up to date on the happenings and needs in the district? Just describe for us what your communication and engagement will look like in this office.
Okay. Well, I've worked in rural communications all my life. Started working for the FFA magazine right out of college and continued that on through my corporate career. Worked for one of the largest agri-media companies in the nation. And so I already have social media programs in place. I have my tenantpercentage.com would become just say the same thing. So I already have the electronic pieces in place. I also want to be a part of the community in terms of events, learning, listening. I think it's very important to listen to constituents, be a delegate and not just a trustee in Little Rock. So that will be very important to me. I plan to have a dual office in Gentry. I'm in a position in life that I can do those committee assignments through the year. I can go to events, take care of people, and I'll do that from that office.
I'm really strong on, I believe, in pushing information out to my constituents and being accountable to my constituents. On my Facebook page, I'm going to tell you, this is how I voted, this is why I voted this way. I'm going to tell you in advance, these bills are coming, I want your input. I believe on Thursday, in the session, we're not in session on Fridays. Thursday, straight back home. Friday morning, I'm in that Kiwanis Club so they can kick me around some. Because if you hang out in Little Rock all the time, your bill's great, your bill's great, this session's great. That's what you hear. We need to come back and get around people who will tell us, stop it. So I like going to Kiwanis Clubs. I like going to ball games where you can sit next to somebody and say, all right, this bill's coming up. I know your teeth are giving your thoughts. This is a much larger district, there'll be a lot more ball games, a lot more civic clubs, and so gonna have to use some wisdom here, but the best thing I think is to do is to be accessible, to be accountable, to be real.
It's one of the things that I love about this is how we have this set up is that it's not supposed to be a full-time job. It's supposed to be where you live, it's supposed to work in your district. And so naturally, there's going to be accessibility and there should be accountability. I would also like to set up the exact same things that Jeff talked about through your Facebook pages, through your websites. Also been working and thinking through, talking through special groups in through the community, people that have special expertise in different areas. For example, an agriculture group, I've been talking about 4 or 5 men that I truly trust and would ask them, would you make sure I am communicating to people in your area the right way? And also you can advise me on bills that you are seeing and that we can communicate back and forth. So education, agriculture, small business, being able to have those subgroups be ready. And then I would also love to have special meet and greet sessions throughout quarters, so that always available and always ready.
Thanks. Now we're going to turn to some fiscal issues in the state. As a lot of folks here know, the state has had a surplus over the last year, and we know that likely won't last forever. So the question is, starting with Kayla, what is your plan for balancing the long-term revenue needs of the state while also making sure that our tax code is simple and appropriate?
Okay, so we have that surplus, and we need to first push the information out to folks on what's going on. The internet sales tax, I like to always point that out to people, because when we passed that, and I voted against it, not because I didn't like the fairness aspect of it, because we were broadening the base significantly. We're taking a whole lot more money than I would have liked to have seen us lower that sales tax to correspond with that, the money's coming in our sales tax. The income tax, we have increases, we have surpluses across the board, income, corporate income, and of course, people tell me they're concerned. The big talk right now is, what are we gonna do? Are we going to lower the income tax? And that has got the big drumbeat. And I want to get input from people, because once that ball starts rolling, you can't stop it. So I wanna know, how do you feel about the income tax? How do you feel about the sales tax? Almost 10%, isn't it? Around here, it's 9.5 to 9.75. That impacts people. And then also, everyone's concerned about, I don't want this to be a whack-a-mole. If you take away the income tax, my property taxes are going to eat me alive. So I want constituent input. You all need to help drive this, because I assure you, there's planners out there that already have their plan, and I want you all to have a voice in it.
What I'd like to see happen is, we've got about $1 billion surplus. And so in that question, it talks about a long-term perspective and a short-term perspective. Long-term perspective, it makes me think about, first off, I'm thankful we have the surplus. I think we didn't overspend it. But I'm also irritated because we took dollars that we didn't technically need. And so it makes me think we've got to cut taxes. But from a long-term perspective, I'd like to see us take a portion of that and beef up our safety net, our safety account, our rainy day fund. It's at $1.2 billion. I'd like to see it a little higher. Take that away, and that would give us long-term stability. From a short-term perspective, I'd like to see cuts. I'd like to see we have the highest sales tax in the country, just about. And I'd like to see if we can cut that area, then what that does is create a consumer confidence. If they're going and buying goods at a cheaper rate, then they will all of a sudden feel like, okay, I can go and return and don't have to hoard and hunker down. So I'd like that would be the short-term perspective for actually growth in our economy. Thanks.
What a great time to be in Arkansas. Really. I mean, we are so blessed. Our GDP is growing. It's because people are working and they're working hard. They're producing and creating these kinds of surpluses that we have. We are better than budget and better than last year for our fiscal year. Now, in business, that was a home run. If you're better than budget at the end of the year and better than last year, that makes you a hero if you're running a business. I always like to see those kinds of numbers, and that's where we are in Arkansas. But we are going to be faced with not faced with a surplus, but blessed with a surplus. We will have some expense increase needs as growth comes this way. And believe me, I came from Fayetteville and Dr. Reporting this evening. Growth is coming this way. So we will need to address those expense needs. And I love this study, the long-term reserve that we have as a state. I would support continuing to save our money. We always tell our farmers to save for a rainy day, and that's what I think the state should do too.
Yeah. So next question, we'll start with Tyler. As a state senator, what is the first piece of legislation that you file?
I've got a list that we keep it from going door to door and talking to folks. For me, I have to start with what I said is most important to me, and that's pro-life bills and pro-life agendas. So if the opportunity would be to completely abolish abortion, that would be my first goal. That's the home run. You know, we would even settle with taking base hits. For example, moving closer to Texas heartbeat bills. We have seen Texas pass it, increase in abortions happen in Oklahoma. Oklahoma passed it, guess what happens? They're probably going to increase abortions here in Arkansas. I would like to see us move towards a Texas heartbeat bill, number one. I would love to pass a medical freedom amendment. I would love to have that on a ballot where vaccinations are not required, are completely private. I'd like to see that. And then I guess, third, there's some agricultural things that I would love to see. I'm irritated when I hear irritation from cattle farmers about a bovine tax for $1 per head for every cattle that goes to sell in Arkansas. It doesn't happen in Texas and Oklahoma. I want to fight for those things to fulfill.
Well, initially, and pro-life is a key tenet of mine as well, but I think that may have been decided for us. We're going to have to deal with the remnants, or not the remnants, but what will be facing us. For me, it started out when I saw the question as a foundation for my belief in business support and business development and education and training and good health care was to have great internet access. About 7 out of 10 people in our district have high speed, so that means 30% done. So that was the first thing I thought of. But then since then, I rethought it, and I think election integrity should be the first thing. That's the bedrock of our constitutional democracy. And I think we need to work hard to make sure our elections are full of integrity, people have full confidence in them, and that we can encourage more people to get involved in the voting process through that.
Thanks. And Gail.
Well, this question I'm not so warm to, because I'm usually the girl that wants to tear up everybody's bills. But there are some good bills that we need. And I have several, I believe before you sponsor a bill, it should be constituent driven. It shouldn't be just an idea that you came up with or came up with, you heard some policy in place. It should be constituent driven. I have a couple, they're very specific towards some constituent issues, so I'm not gonna talk about those right now. There's other bills that I know that we need, there will probably be a lot of people jumping on those bills. We don't need 20 of them, I'll wait and see. But someone else is not going to do a CRT bill, I think we've had a good CRT bill at the end. So I think that's one that I think we need to look at again. In education, this bill would be to get rid of a bunch of stuff. In education, I think the state is a big part of our problem. I sit there in an education committee meeting and we just pass some junk and then we pass more junk and more reports, more busy work for the teachers that no one will ever really read. We have no real reasonable belief that it's going to improve education. But we pass them. I would like to undo a lot of things.
Thank you. This next question, we'll start with Jeff, and it has to do with all the explosive growth we've seen in Northwest Arkansas. A lot of folks have been worried about the various challenges that come with growth, like traffic and infrastructure, for example. As a state senator, how would you address the problem potentially with growth, the challenges associated with that in partnership with localities?
Well, you can't just obviously expand Highway 62 in Weddington overnight. I do think we will have some structural issues as we go forward. But I think first you got to stay in lockstep with the cities, local governments across the district. I believe government functions best at the most local level possible. So I think a state senator would need to stay in touch with our Morrow courts, our city councils, make sure that growth is managed from the bottom up. Already getting to know the JPs, county judges around. Of course, there's races for all of those too, I know quite well. But team building and relationships have always been strong suits in my business career and in my relationships. Finally, I would use my years of budgeting, staff management, finding ways to squeeze a dime out of a nickel like we did on the farm back in Lincoln and meet the needs we have and make really at the same time make things exciting and productive here in District 35. We've got some great years ahead of us, and I'd love to be a part of that as your state senator.
On the growth, we know it's coming, we know people already have opinions on it, and they should. So one issue we had recently in grass is floating, just like all around here, new highway. We found out there's gonna be a potential new highway coming through a lot of folks' houses, farms, and they were concerned because of COVID, they had not had a chance to really get their input in. And first RDOT said, no, we can't come out and do it, we cannot do any forums, we'll have to do everything by Zoom. Fortunately, they worked with us and we got them there and we had a forum for the people. So what I believe is important, yes, I reach out to my mayors and I reach out to all those folks, but I want to make sure I'm driving the information out to people whose farms are going to be impacted about this so that they can help shape and be a partner in planning where this development is going, treat people fairly. We know it's coming, but they need to have a voice. I hate it when I see things and that's one thing when I reached out to RDOT, I said, is this thing already going down the line before people even get a chance to have their say and their voice, to voice their concerns? We still have problems to fix, but we need to have to work with the people on addressing that.
For this question, I think about, we've got about $970 billion, I believe the number is, from federal dollars from Rescue Act that is earmarked for infrastructure development. And I'm so thankful that we have that. I'm thankful that we get to use that and it's not Arkansas taxpayer dollars. And so I would love to first off make sure that as a state senator for us, we go and fight to get our fair share of federal funding dollars that can focus on an infrastructure development. And so when I talk to folks in our area, and I know it's here, I know it's everywhere across the state, but affordable and available housing is a big deal. A lot of people are growing and moving into this area. We are seeing a short supply of housing, and that a big reason for that is our infrastructure on water and sewer, and so that needs to be a focus. We also say our road development to make sure that we are so competitive there, and then broadband. Those are the things that I would like to see us use, especially the federal dollars that are tagged for that, so we can actually lower our state tax dollars and use those dollars.
Thanks. Next question is, starting with Kayla, how should the state better connect the needs of the Arkansas workforce below being taught in K-12 schools?
So one thing I would say on this, in that first minute here, after visiting with some local superintendents about this very issue a couple of months ago, what I noticed also with our funding is right now in the state, we are not designating our CTE funding. It's just part of the foundation funding, and they're working it around. And yet I see so much waste on some. I can find 100 million real fast. I tell people on some stuff that we're wasting that could be so much better invested in programs like CTE. So that frustrates me. So I'm not saying spend more money on education. I'm saying take this waste that's very wasteful, put it over here in programs that the parents support, the kids need, the communities need, and it will make a difference.
I would like us to see, we talked about developing workforce. There has been a lack of investment to our vocational training. And so when I think about our schools and these types of programs, I would like to not only see an increase in attention, but help change a stigma. I think that's out there. I think there's unfortunately a feel that a lot of kids have it and say, if you don't go to college, you weren't successful. And I think that's wrong. College is not for everybody. In fact, when I keep seeing the liberal progressive things that are being taught in a lot of our state colleges, I'm not sure if I want my kids going there. And so I would much like, when I think about workforce development, I think about increasing the vocational training opportunities, starting in all the way through in high school, development through. There are not as many as you would think in our state. In fact, one of them is in our prison system, and talking with Mike Rogers, who's big folks in this area, he says that's the hardest one to graduate from. And I tell you, that's where I would like to see us increase, not only increasing the dollars and support there, but also increasing the messaging around it to make sure there's not sticking there.
Thanks.
I know many of you may be, I am certainly a product of vocational agriculture. Vocational training, I think, is crucially important. I'm also a product of internships. When I was in college, I had a chance to intern with the National FFA in Washington. Wound up getting my first job out when I finally got my degree. Couldn't get a job. I had a couple offers in North Dakota and a swine farm in Missouri. I went to the FFA because I was an intern there. We had those relationships. So I think we could revisit programs like FFA. I know at Lincoln even we had FBLA, Future Business Leaders. I don't even know if that still exists. I'd like to check on that. I also like what's going on with the Northwest Institute of Technology over in Springdale. They're taking, much like what I had in Lincoln, taking students junior, senior year and starting to go into those vocational training programs like nursing, auto mechanics, electricians. I use them all the time in Gentry on our workforce housing business, and we need more folks in those kinds of trades. They're great jobs.
The next and final prayer question that we had, starting with Tyler, is the legislature in Arkansas and more broadly, we've seen a decline in civility, and there's been an increase in personal animosity amongst legislators. What will your approach be as a senator to help diffuse this and work productively despite differences in party affiliation and opinion?
Sure, I'm excited about this topic, this area. I would love to represent us well in Little Rock. When you talk about that topic, that is what I do. That's what I do at Simmons. You talk about having to communicate and build relationships and trust with folks of all different opinions and goals and initiatives and backgrounds. That's what I do. That's what I do when I sell to customers, right? You can't have a pushy salesman. That's a used car salesman. And you don't get very far. You have to have internal abilities to sell internally and externally. And so that would be an honor to do that. You know, we've got folks that think that because you've never served in government, that thinks you can't go represent the people. And that it's a family right to be able to do that, or that you have to have some sort of pedigree. And I disagree with that. That's what I love about our democracy, that we get to decide who we want to represent us there. And whoever the people choose, that's who they want to represent them. So I'm excited about the ability and the honor to get to represent us well and work across all of the aspects.
Well, I don't know if, in this race, I've probably gotten a good civics lesson out of it, but the meaning in Greek, the meaning of politics is affairs of the cities, the process of making decisions that apply to members of a group. It's a process. We are a representational or representative democracy. We are to come together, find ways to work together and do what we can for District 35. That's our job. In my business life, in my career, in relationships, sports, FFA, whatever it is, I have had the opportunity to simmer down disagreements. I do have my non-negotiables, and I will have those, and I will stand for those. But oftentimes, that's where you find the other person has some negotiables. Theirs aren't necessarily non-negotiable. And then you can find some common ground and move things forward that way.
Thank you.
So, as I mentioned, I'm sometimes a troublemaker, and I'll sometimes take some hard stands. But I'm happy to say that I don't think I've ever had a cross word on the floor with anybody. A couple tense moments, and I did speak really strongly on a bill and got corrected a little bit. But it did become personal. And afterward, and it got heated. Afterward, I had the guy who corrected me, the chair. And that's what you need to do. I believe in taking those hard stands. I don't believe in treating people poorly, badly, or brutally. I also believe that I'm of the opinion that I'm a Republican. But if a Democrat comes up with a good bill, they ought to get to running. I don't support this idea. I'm going to kill a Democratic bill and then look right at this our bill. I don't think that's fair. You come up with the idea first, you get to running. I also believe that it's most important that I know the Senate's had some troubles. I believe it's important that we send people there that will have the conviction, speak up for those convictions, not water down, but always treat people fairly, kindly, and make people back home proud of their duties.
Thank you. Now I'll return some of the questions that folks have had an opportunity to write down. Each again is one opportunity to pick one of these randomly, though each of you will have 1 minute to respond to the question as posed. So I guess we'll start with you, Jeff. You want to select one here, and if you would like to read it out loud, feel free, and then maybe each of you an opportunity to respond.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
There we respond to this. Or?
Yeah, feel free. I'll get you. You want to do that first? You can.
Well, this question I think is for Tyler. Which has more pressure, winning a national championship in basketball or running for state senate? So
Well, it's like another one. Yeah. Let's just list.
you want to answer?
I can.
No, literally for you. I have not won a national championship in basketball.
So you're just assuming I didn't.
I would actually say over time. Just in my opinion. Could have been on the national team.
We did. That was a fun group. Farmington University, small college basketball. I jokingly say I'm the best under 6 foot average athlete white guard in America. But no, it's that was a fun team there. And what I love about that team is it was a team. There was all stars, average players, above performing what they should have been players, and we came together for a week. What we never forget. But no, I guess what I would say on that is it does take a team. It takes a team of people. Nobody can do this by themselves. You have to have people that are in court right for you. You have to have people in your court that are advising you. And you have to have humble leadership. And so that would be my synergy, I guess, for how we won that 150. We had the same thing. So,
Jeff, you want to get another one?
Probably You're dead. Okay, this question is, I think it's for all of us. You don't need to read it and then start.
Yeah.
Will you support legislation that will stop private businesses from mandating vaccines upon their employees? Yes, I would support legislation to do that. The way that this pandemic was operated and ran, there was so much confusion. Leadership tried its best, but we've really got to get a handle on the next time this happens. And it's always been sort of abhorrent to me that our state and local leaders, our health leaders, weren't better prepared for such a thing. But I do think we need to work with our private businesses as best we can if something like this happens again. We have to be forthright with people, and we have to have accurate information. And I would do that as a communications guy. I would make sure that everything is accurate. And I'm losing the word right now, but we don't keep second guessing ourselves. That's what I'm trying to say. And as far as mandating the vaccines, our employees this past time and companies were doing that, or thinking about doing, were putting those employees at risk because they didn't have accountability to the employees if something happened to them. Okay, guys, with this.
And
Okay, so, yes, I did support, in the special session, we tried to get this type of legislation passed. We were not able to get this. We were able to get a weaker bill passed. That's all we could get. And we need people who are willing to stand up and fight on this one. And I'll tell you, I was cool to this one originally because this goes against everything I believe in a Republican as far as letting, and we're at will state. But once the government, we saw it, began to act as the private business began to act as another arm of the government, that's where everything got all topsy-turvy. And I heard from so many constituents who had to choose. And some of them, sadly, they had no choice. They said, I'm taking the vaccine because I can't lose everything. That's heartbreaking. And other people who walked away from a job and it cost them dearly. That's heartbreaking. So we fought to try to get the protection in there. We didn't get sufficient protection. We know we need people who are willing to stand up and fight on this issue.
Yes, I will. I referenced this in earlier conversation that I want to fight for medical freedom amendment. This is something that it's important. It's important for our folks. When I think about this, it's the limiting government is my utmost goal when I think about Republican mindset and platform. And so I want to make sure that government can't tell us how to live our lives. how to raise our families, what we have to put in our bodies, and even from employee side, I'm thankful that we had Act 115 because it was a job saving ability to provide exemptions where employees could not fire and employers could not fire employees. And so I view it as two things to be true at the same time. I'm thankful we had that act, but I also think we need to do more. So that's where I've been on that. I'm thankful that we have a
Next.
Okay, have you signed the petition for the medical freedom amendment? If not, why not? Yes, I have signed. I guess that's a short answer.
Yes, that's fine.
I have not. Is there one here?
Yes, right here.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe in God? Do you not be afraid to admit it? Yes, absolutely. That's why that's who I am. Everything in Colossians says that, whatever you do it for the glory of God. I jokingly talk to my friends about that. I think God's got sense of humor when he says that, because he says whatever you do. So he gives us a little bit of freedom. You want to farm? You want to go to business? You want to be a preacher? Right? All of it is the same calling. I'm at the Dogwood Festival last week. The lady comes up to me and I was telling her about how we've been praying about running, wanting to serve the Lord. And she goes, I just love the calling that you talk about there. And I said, she was staying home long. I said, you have the exact same calling. You have the exact same calling. Live for the Lord, raise your family, honor him. It's the same thing. Just because we're up here talking with a microphone and on stream, doesn't matter. It's the same calling you have at home, same calling you have in that seat right there. Honor the Lord, live for him. Let's fight for that culture back here in Arkansas. Jeff?
You believe in God, will you not be afraid to admit it? If I do or don't believe in God, I definitely believe in God. Yes, indeed. I was raised in the Methodist Church in Lincoln, married a Baptist girl, so I have Baptist training in addition to Methodist training. That's a good combination. Now back at the worshiping and happy to be on the worship team. Got plugged in immediately when I moved back here from North Carolina after losing my wife to cancer and seeing her off in a transition to heaven. We got involved in a church right away where my mom and dad were married and where my great-great-grandfather took off as a circuit rider, and he's buried over around Morrow town now in the cemetery over there. So, it's total guiding principles for me. I told you earlier, there's a couple of things I base my life and would do and will also base my leadership on, and that's the Bible and the Arkansas Constitution. And please keep praying for all of us. I think it's important. And also, if those Summers people are here, I'd like to meet them because my dad was born in Summers. So if y'all are from Summers, see me afterwards.
Thanks. And yeah.
So, yes, I do believe in God, and I trust in Jesus for my Savior. And I openly admit to about 500 kids a week. I teach kids Bible classes regularly, and so I'm more than happy to openly admit it and thankful for the opportunity.
We just have one more question, so we have a minute to get to it. So I'll just ask this one, starting with Jeff. Can Arkansas cut property taxes on agricultural land like surrounding states that rural folks get harmed every time?
Can we cut the taxes?
Yeah, can we cut property taxes on agricultural land like surrounding states have?
Well, I don't know the actual Arkansas law on there. Maybe some of you folks may. I think we owe it to our agricultural producers to not just burden them with the taxes that are required to do our schools. For instance, I was on a tax ethics commission in Arkansas County, and the only way we could support schools in Arkansas County was with a property tax. And so our landowners were the ones who were hit with this, not people who rented. They didn't have to pay the property tax for the schools, even though their kids were going to schools. Not illegal immigrants, they didn't have to do it. So it was all on the property owners. I mean, many of you are blessed to be property owners, I am as well, I want to support our schools with property taxes. But that would be one thing, we've got to take a hard look at that, especially for our farmers that are going to be under all kinds of pressures besides taxes as this growth that we all know is coming this way begins to come onto our agricultural lands over here.
Thanks. Gail?
I confess, I need to educate myself more on this. I hope so. I think that we have an unfairness in our property tax system with regard to farmers altogether. If I understand it correctly, I do. Their property taxes are capped, not on your stocks. And so I think it's interesting how they treat different property. As far as I think farmers take a lot more in the hit sometimes, and where investment income goes, sometimes, and the property tax, I don't think necessarily is fair. But I need to learn more about this issue, and certainly welcome any opportunity to help our farmers and ease the burden of property tax.
I would like to see this happen. I would like us to, talk with the rural community and a lot of our farmers. There's a frustration when we see that the majority of our school funding comes from our property taxes. And when you look at the majority of our farmers don't have, they are extremely further out from the schools themselves, outside the city limits. And a lot of folks don't have kids being schooled in school anymore. And so when you think about that recipe, we have seen other states that have passed legislation that has exemptions for 65 and older. And so I would like us to see the potential that there might be something there for us to explore, especially for our farming community. That if you live outside the city limits and over 65, maybe there's an opportunity for us to cut taxes there. And anytime we can cut taxes, it's going to be the right decision. Anytime we can put more dollars back into our pockets, I will always believe that we know how to spend our dollars better than anybody else. And so if that's for property tax, sales tax, or income tax, that would be my mission.
Thanks. So we'll round things out with the thoughts from each of the candidates. We've done about 2 minutes, and we'll start in reverse order from the beginning. So how everyone gets to go.
Thank you for letting me introduce myself to you folks here tonight. It would be an honor. It'd be an honor to get to represent us over in Little Rock. From the very beginning, when Megan and I started praying about this, there's the only, I don't know how non-believers run for any close next election, because there's a peace that God, it's like we're sitting on the edge of our seat saying, Lord, if you call us to run, awesome. Can't wait to glorify you. Lord, if you call us to lose, awesome. Can't wait to glorify you, right? And my favorite moment has been with my 12-year-old son. After the first week of campaign, we huddled up and we said, all right, hey, awesome conversation. So we got cool sign placement. Let's praise the Lord. Let's pray about it real fast. And let's pray for Gail and Jeff. Sorry, Doug, I didn't first prayer. But folks, let's pray for our opponents. My 12-year-old son goes, Dad, we can't pray for our opponents. They're trying to beat you. You'll be wrong. But I go, Mom, this is what it's called to do. Not conform, but transformed by the renewing of the word, and have our eyes set on eternal perspective. Whether we win or lose, we want all of our eyes on the Lord. And that's how we're praying for each of these candidates. My favorite moment, when he turned and he goes, that head tilt, by far my favorite conversation on the campaign trail. I could lose tomorrow. It's been worth it. That's been our attention. Every conversation, how do we point folks to conservative values, to continue to represent them well in Little Rock? That's our heart. Excited to do that. We'd be honored to be able to represent us well in Little Rock. It's where I believe God can open some doors for us through awesome conversations, and not knowing that we will not always have my eye on every single thing. Hey, I promise you I will filter through that perspective, through God's word, the relationship with Him, and the heart to be a servant leader for you guys. So thanks for letting me say hello today.
So 2 minutes just feels like a lot. I'm excited. I hope that I convinced you I'm different. I believe you need more different. I believe there are all kinds of same old legislators up there that are gonna do a lot of the same. We need some people that are gonna take some hard stands. We need some people that are gonna be different. The campaign finance. There was a bill this last session, and I read it that night, and I went, this is doing something the title says it doesn't do. And what it did was it increased. Right now, the campaign contribution rules are, you can carry over, well, it wasn't until this bill, they back, it's not right now, nor. You can carry over the limit of your base of your salary, $44,000, that's what you can carry over. So you don't build up these big war chests. This bill had another little title, but what it did was it removed that limit. I called the ethics commission, I said, I think I know what's going on. They said, that you're right. So I went up there and I spoke against that bill. I want at least the legislators to be on record. I thought, pretend like you don't know what you're voting for here. And it passed overwhelmingly. I was one of the few no-votes on that. But that is what I'm different about, because what that money does. So now you can campaign, you can fundraise much more than you ever need. Even after you went fundraise. And you don't have to dispose it. So you can build up more chests. It does two things. It makes it harder for anybody else to run. Well, I'm against that. But at worst, it introduces even more so the power of money. I can even buy you more easily now. I have a limit to how much I can spend to buy you, to own you. Those are one of the things that makes me different. Most politicians want that money. They want that advantage. They want power.
Well, we started out talking about, who we are and what we are and why we're doing this. And to me, I keep coming back to for an area that I love so much. And it's good to see some familiar faces in the room. There's many more out there. To be a part of the growth and the development and the evolution, if you will, of District 35, I think we can be such a great place to live and work, and I want to be a part of that. We've talked about some issues tonight, 3 that are near and dear to me that I'll just reiterate are business development and recruitment, finding better jobs, getting better companies to come here that suit our district. I think I know the district well enough and its people to know what could be a fit and what might not be. Education and training to go along with that. We've talked about that. And there's a lot of detail to be fleshed out in those things. But I've had those experiences even personally, and then excellence in healthcare. So I just like to put my years of CEO experience, startup family business experience, running a national corporation to work for District 35. I'm in a unique position in life with a unique skill set to make that happen. Put that education and training that I received in Lincoln and at the University of Arkansas and getting in other places, put that to work for y'all as well, for our kids and students to best prepare them. That might be vocational training or it's college prep. And then use my home hospice, veterans home and children's hospital experiences. Really, I hope none of y'all have to do those, but I've had I guess an opportunity, if you call it that, to be involved in all 3 of those things with my late wife, with my dad, who's now in heaven, and then even a grandson who came here for Christmas and wound up at the Children's Hospital and found out we don't have a level 1 trauma center in Northwest Arkansas. Those are things that I'd like to be a part of working to improve where we live and work.
Yeah. Well, this concludes the formal programming for tonight. Thank everyone for coming out. Just a reminder that May 9th is the beginning of early voting, and May 24th is the in-person voting for this race. I just wanted to take a moment to give a hand to all 3 of the candidates. If anyone has any thoughts or feedback on this event, as I think about posting future events, that would be awesome. And of course, feel free to mingle and chat. We have plenty of time at this venue moving forward.
We'll give our hosts.
How come on this Arkansas government council, they people have support a lot of businesses to terminate people who aren't vaccinated?
Sure.
I've addressed this at multiple forums and happy to do it again. So when we were filling that out, our heart was to limit government. And so my heart was to, I don't want to see governments being able to tell us how to live our lives or run our businesses. And so honestly, there was, knowing that we have Act 1115 that had the exemptions for not, where they weren't able to fire over vaccinations, that's where my heart went to. When it came out, it didn't reflect what I actually believe. I reached out to them and asked if I could add comments or something, they would not allow me. And so try to make that clear to where we're going. That's not a reflection of what I believe. What I do believe is that I don't want government involved in anything, honestly. I want as limited government as possible. I want to make sure that there's a fear that we've seen what government has done through COVID. We've seen where they have taken this and increased power, increased fear through it. And so I've got fears that they would also want to say, you have to have so many LGBTQ representations on your team, no matter how big the business is. Or you can't be open on certain days, or you have to be open on certain days. And so that's where my mind is going always. And so, but no, just to be clear, no, I'm not really in vaccination requirements, but I always want limited government.
So if Tyson wants you to support that bill, then you would stand up to Tyson?
Absolutely.
Because little people, like, it's affected me personally. My husband had to miss out on work because he didn't take the vaccine that violates my conscience.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that's horrible, but these companies have been used as another arm of the government to force people against their conscience. It should never be right for them to be able to do that.
Absolutely. We've had that sentence. I'm thankful we don't have that requirement. And we've seen so many people that have come Tyson to sentence. And so I think it's incredibly unwise, especially in a limited labor market. It's incredibly dumb, in my opinion, for any company to do that.
Well, thanks
Yeah, we
everyone.
can have a
Yeah.
conversation. Thanks all for.
Oh, Joel, no.